Any Ohio State fans in the audience to counter that? Texas? Anybody from Ohio State? Well, we got another Texan coming to the platform. He raises the stature of this movement on a literal level and a spiritual level. He's the tallest man in the IAMCS. Would you give a warm welcome to Texan J.K. McKee?
Good morning. For disclosure's sake, a fellow passenger decided to give me a 72-hour bug. But I am on the recovery. But for some reason or another, I'm able to pronounce the letter het much more accurately than I ever have before. It's funny how that works. All right, let's get into the material. When I was in the 9th grade, attending Christian school, I had to read the Epic of Gilgamesh. And I was taught how there were other creation and flood stories, similar to but different than what is seen in Genesis. When I was a sophomore in college, taking ancient Hebrew civilization, I learned about the JEDP documentary hypothesis, the idea that the Torah was not a product of Mosaic origin, but instead was merged together from different sources and mythologies after the return of the exiles from Babylon. And when I started seminary 20 years ago, I had to take a class by a professor who believed in extreme minimalism, which essentially advocated that everything which took place prior to the quote-unquote return of the Jewish people from Babylon was a fabrication. So a group of nomads could then go start a new life, all funded by the Persian government. Now, I am a stronger believer because of being exposed to ideas and concepts from those on the theological left. Each of us in our lives has had to interact with other perspectives, especially those we disagree with. And if we are ever going to learn, we're going to have to hear other points of view we don't like. Many of us come to an event like this, and there is a degree of comfort and reinforcement with how we are around persons of like mind. Yet the theological and spiritual world out there is often not a nice place. There are some very smart people out there who will pick apart any belief you consider to be sacred or hold to dearly. And if one does not watch oneself, he or she could be set onto a path of apostasy away from the God of Israel. Frequently, for people in the Messianic movement, we encounter apostasy or a denial of the Lord via those who have been negatively influenced by Jewish anti-missionaries, getting one to deny Yeshua's messiahship. Yet as we get closer and closer to Yeshua's return, an abandonment of faith is going to occur in many other different ways. And we need to be aware about a few and probably unknown factors which may play into this. What happens after death? You're going to be buried, cremated. I'm going to be freeze-dried. For a majority of us here, we believe that each human being made in God's image, Genesis 1:27, is a combination of both material and immaterial components. When a man or woman dies, an immaterial consciousness is transferred to another dimension, temporarily held there until the future resurrection. At the resurrection, that immaterial consciousness will rejoin with one's reanimated remains and exist in a permanently embodied, immortal condition. Yet, such a sacred belief for many of us has been under considerable scrutiny the past 3 to 4 decades, in much of evangelical Protestantism, no less. Many are of the opinion that the scriptures teach that a human being is a monistic entity, solely existing of physical elements which can only exist in this dimension. When a human being dies, he or she goes into complete unconsciousness, and we will be reawakened or even recreated, as it were, at a future resurrection of the dead. What is commonly labeled as soul sleep is often not regarded as heresy. It is just considered one-dimensional, and it leaves many unanswered questions about a philosophy of personhood. Many are content with what happens during the intermediate state being somewhat of a mystery. But if one goes into complete unconsciousness until the resurrection, questions are necessarily raised, perhaps unknown questions, by Yeshua's affirmation that he would be in paradise the day of his death, Luke 23:43. If that was just a statement regarding the future kingdom several millennia removed, then what actually happened to Yeshua during his death and resurrection? Could he have actually gone into complete unconsciousness? If a person affirms that Yeshua is God incarnated in human form, does this not possibly raise some issues regarding the nature of Yeshua? A number of smart people have concluded that Yeshua died, went into nothingness, and then was resurrected by God precisely because they believe he was not God. And human beings made in God's image, it is thought to mean that not that they have an immaterial component which can exist outside of this dimension. It just means that they have some advanced chemical neuroprocesses. If the image of God in human beings is just a statement, meaning that we have some advanced capabilities, what is that to say about the uniqueness of men and women? Many draw the conclusion that humans are just advanced biological organisms, a consequence of billions of years of evolutionary development. Primitive ancients, seeing the ability for people to speak and write and reason with each other, concluded that some kind of supernatural imprint was placed on people by a creator of some kind. And so for many in contemporary theology, believe it or not, if what we consider the image of God is just how ancient people explain abilities for humans to speak or write, how would ancient people have explained abnormal and destructive human behavior? Is what we call sin truly the cause and effect of the catastrophic schism between human beings and their creator? Or is what we call sin actually just the result of bad chemical reactions in a person's neurology? Is the cure for sin experiencing a dynamic encounter with one's creator via Yeshua the Messiah? Or could the cure for sin be some kind of new, artificial pharmaceutical, a pill, drugs designed to alter brain chemistry? Human beings are physical creatures, and we are affected by physical and external stimuli. Who you are as a person today is the long-term result of having a unique spiritual imprint from a God who resides outside of this dimension, and your interactions with both him and this physical environment. But are the offenses you commit with him and others entirely the fault of breathing bad air, drinking bad water, or even eating the food from the Rosen Plaza? What role does God play in human life? What role do your choices play in the outcome of who you are? How easy can it be for the supernatural, extra, or multidimensional component of the human experience to quickly be removed from the equation of who we are? Many in the realm of theology today have not simply reevaluated old beliefs and incorporated new information and perspectives. Many have gone through a radical deconstruction and have raised sacred beliefs and matters to the ground, not quite knowing what to rebuild later. To them, in a world where human beings are the consequence of a random cosmic clash of atoms, what theology of the past determined was the clear sign of divine intelligence, creating men and women with a unique purpose. To them is primitive ancients, ascribing what they did not know or understand to a more powerful force. Asking questions and considering the points of view of others you disagree with is not a bad thing, but theology as the study of God generally requires you to believe in God. Otherwise, it just becomes a philosophy like any other. How easy can it be to ask a few seemingly innocent questions and then begin to entertain an avalanche of doubt? Perhaps what many have described as a soul was just simple people wanting to make sense of life. We live in an advanced scientific and technological age today, after all. Did the ancient Jews in Babylon simply repackage the stories of creation and the flood, changing a few things here or there? Did those in ancient Israel simply describe the earth as being a circle held up by pillars because they lacked the tools and instruments we have today? Was this some God working through the limitations and restricted vocabulary of past millennia, or limited people trying to understand the world around them, eventually placing all of their unknowns into some file or waste bin labeled God? What have you witnessed or even experienced yourself? Do you know some of the abnormal or irregular attacks occurring today on faith? Many conversations are coming now in the mid-2020s, which many of us did not even know were out there. I have confidence that many of us will be able to engage properly and prevent many people from going in the wrong direction. But in the spiritual war in which we are engaged, we need to ask the Lord to give us the wisdom, discernment, and the necessary alerts, like I'm getting right here, to look beyond more customary venues of faith denial and identify those areas where a new path to abandoning Him can be detected.
JK, with that dry humor, it makes sense to me why you want to be freeze-dried, actually. Praise the Lord. If you want more Messianic Apologetics as your socials, YouTube, check out Messianic Apologetics. With that said, we were going to invite...